Welcome to Why I Left, a podcast that explores the Great Resignation. I'm your host, Brian Akar. Join me as I chronicle real stories from real people about the reasons they decided to leave their jobs during the pandemic and what has happened since. Hello, and thanks for tuning in to this episode of Why I Left. In today's episode, I chat with Chase Tucker. Chase is a former Peloton instructor who is now an executive fitness coach and mentor. He's also the founder of Elite Physique Mastery, where he works with women over 30 with demanding schedules, helping them get unstuck with their health and fitness to shed stubborn body fat, achieve a sustainable, strong, and lean physique, as well as long-lasting health, optimal energy, and deep confidence. If you know me personally, you know I'm a huge Peloton fan. Yes, I'm one of those. So I'm very excited to have him on the show today. So let's go check out his story. So our guest today is Chase Tucker. Chase's mission has always been to serve others in the pursuit of becoming the best version of themselves. And he did that and more as a Peloton instructor of the #Wolfpack. Now, his work helps women show up at their best at home and work to lead by example. However, he recognized that his energies and focus needed to be directed towards opportunities outside of Peloton. So his story is one of finding clarity. So I'm really excited to have him on the show. So hi, Chase. How you doing today?
I'm blessed and highly favored. I can't complain.
I love to hear that. I'm very excited to do this interview, having done many of your workouts before. And so it's really good to connect. What I always like to start off with is, prior to us discussing that career pivot, tell us a little bit about, your upbringing and where you call home.
Yes, absolutely. So first of all, before we get into it, I just want to say thank you very much for even having me as a guest on your lovely podcast. I saw some of the reviews before I got on here, and it seems like this is definitely something that people enjoy. The content you're putting out is definitely top tier. I saw one of the people say, it seems like you've been doing this for 100 episodes. So appreciate that. I just want to, shout you out for that, creating this platform for me to speak on. So the question again, you asked, remind me one more time what that was so I can answer that.
Yeah, no, all good. A little bit about, your upbringing and where you call home now.
Right. So where I call home right now, I'm currently based in Arizona, Scottsdale, Arizona to be more specific. And I grew up in Chicago. So grew up in, anybody who follows me on Peloton probably heard me say on more than one occasion just how much I love and rep Chicago. But I grew up in Chicago, moved away when I was I'd say 10 or 11. And Chicago's for sure my favorite city. It's where I call home. It's where, every city that I travel to, I'm kind of comparing it to Chicago in the way, because it's really, great city. Not to go off on a tangent about how much I love Chicago, but
no, that's awesome. And what are some of the things that you've been passionate about professionally?
Yes. So passion, I would say has always been my compass. I should actually backtrack. It has, and it's only become more refined as I learned more about myself. I thought that I wanted to follow my parents' footsteps, when I was going to college. So I went pre-med. And so my passion I was like, I love that they serve people and help make people better. That sounds like something I'm passionate about. And so I kind of followed that until I realized, that specific path wasn't for me. It wasn't. I'm very much like a person who, especially earlier, if I loved something, I was all about it. If I wasn't, then you couldn't make me do it. Right. There's still some of that exists in me to this day, but I'd like to think that I've developed my discipline a little bit more so I can get myself to do things that I need to do, even though they're not, most fun, as long as they do align with my purpose and my passion. But when I realized that that's something that was a path that no longer served me, I switched my major to physical therapy or pre-physical therapy, because how it typically works is you do pre-physical therapy prerequisites in college or university, and then you graduate and you get some experience at like a physical therapy clinic, and then with that on your resume, you are able to apply and be eligible for physical therapy school. For myself, I made that switch because it was actually a pivot. As most pivots that happen this way, it was out of a kind of a crisis moment where I just wasn't showing up at college, at university for what I was doing. And I had academic probation. I was basically looking at either being put on academic probation and losing, this opportunity to get an education and let myself down, let my parents down, who had sacrificed and poured so much into me my entire life, and, just squander the opportunity. Or I could figure out, what the next course of action could be that would allow me to kind of recoup these losses and as you said, pivot in a good direction. And so for me, I asked myself the question, well, what have I always just naturally gravitated towards? Right? It sounds simple, but what have I always naturally gravitated towards? And it always been a constant in my life, had always been sports and athletics, to the point where it was just natural. I just didn't even, my mom put me in soccer at age 4. And so ever since then, I've been active in a multitude of sports, everything from soccer, basketball, football, track and field, cross country. I think I was at gymnastics program at one point. So physical intelligence in sports was always something that came naturally to me. And so I was like, why don't I pivot from medical school? And since some of the prereqs that I have already are conducive for pre-physical therapy, why don't I just switch in that direction? And so that was the pivot that without realizing it at the time, I was following my passion. I was following what I was naturally magnetically drawn towards. And so that proved, it did cost me an extra year. So I was a 5th year senior, but I knew that even though it would cost me a year in the short term, it would definitely be something that was a smart move in the long run. And I'd say that it's paid off.
Yeah, no, pretty well. Absolutely. And that's actually almost like a perfect transition to what you're likely mostly known for, right? And so what initially drew you to become a Peloton instructor, and how did that passion just even continue to further develop as you got into this space?
Yeah. So it's pretty interesting. Like looking back, it's actually it's so funny how your life looking back, it looks like a movie that played out exactly how it should have.
Right.
But in the moment, you don't see this stuff happening. So I actually never really aspired to be a Peloton instructor. That was never, I didn't even know what Peloton was. They, even in their height of their popularity, before, when it was just like the bike. But the only reason I even knew what it was because a client of mine who I was personal training had a Peloton. They would tell me about oh man, I love my Peloton bike. I ride with this, my favorite instructors are this person and that person. And, I was just like, oh, sounds cool. I don't care for, cycling or I wasn't super crazy about real cycling, let alone on a stationary bike. And so for him when he told me, I was like, oh, that's great. It's great for you to get cardio. That's cool for you. That's cool. But then that was just something that I was aware he was doing in addition to the strength training that we were doing. And it's kind of looking back, it was this hint. It seems like that it was of what was to come, but that was that was the first time I'd ever heard about even what Peloton was. And I think that the next time I had heard about Peloton was probably when I got reached out to by a trainer from Peloton, who was also part of the recruiting process, who would eventually become my lead or supervisor when I did get hired by Peloton. And she reached out and basically said, hey, it was an Instagram DM, and she let me know hey, I have an opportunity I think you might be interested in, do you have this time? And I was like, yeah, sure. Let's meet up, or let's hop on a call. I want to say that something happened that made it so that I almost didn't even have that call. I want to say that the original call, maybe we just got mixed up, but I think I showed up and then maybe she did, maybe she hadn't, or maybe I just got the wrong time. And so I was kind of just like, oh, this, whatever, you know. But the only reason I'd actually even almost, and this is why I'm so grateful that I approach everything with a level of humility and open-mindedness to this day, because you never know what might be the thing that can elevate you to the next level. So, you know, because when she first reached out, she's like, hey, I have this opportunity, you know, Peloton, she mentioned Peloton. And I'm thinking like, okay, this is that bike company. Like, I'm not a cyclist. I don't do cycling like that. I'm not trying to be like I'm not trying to be a cycling instructor. I'm like, that's not on my path. That's not in the cards for me. And like, I wasn't even, you know, my mind wasn't even like, I was so focused on what I was doing, which at the time I was building a coaching business to serve entrepreneurs, doing fit lifestyle coaching for entrepreneurs and people who wanted to improve their health and wellness. Same thing I'm doing now, except now I've niched it down. I've learned enough about business and about the industry and about my target audience who I want to serve at the highest level, to understand that, like, how to take that experience and apply it now. But that was my focus at the time. And I had fallen in love with coaching. I realized, like, this is such a thing I'm passionate about. I love pouring into people in this way. I love the connection. I love the community building. I love the creating new possibilities, literally creating new possibilities for people who were literally stuck before because of either physical, mental, emotional, spiritual blocks that were keeping them from moving forward. And so when she reached out to me, we eventually did get on a call. I remember standing in my apartment, just kind of like hearing everything, and it just instantly, everything just like made sense. And it was only because I had already been thinking, this is something that I want to do eventually, because prior to me having this online coaching business, I had been working as a fitness instructor at Barry's Boot Camp. And the thing, you know, I enjoyed the role. It was great. I loved, you know, harnessing everybody's energy and just getting them, you know, really harnessing and building up and being an orchestrator of people's energy to help them for that 1 hour, really experience a deep growth and leveling up experience that they just felt was just beautifully just tailored for their best energy and their best achievements within that hour. But the thing that I hated was that, you know, eventually I was like, you know what, I'm putting all this effort into this class that when it's done, it just like fades away. It's like vapor. And then I'm limited to the people who are in this room. Like, what I was thinking back then, what if I could do the same thing, but you leverage the internet so I can reach more people and also have it saved, so that, and so my idea was to like, oh, maybe I'm going to find a way to like make enough money and I can travel the world, which is something I'm passionate about. I love travel and visiting different countries and cultures. And I was going to use this coaching business to travel the world because it was location independent, and, you know, do that while also recording footage of me working out that I could live stream to people who could be members of this thing. And then also save content that I could, you know, sell as programs to people. So that was my idea. And then Peloton reaches out and like, they basically already have the studio and have everything set up for what I was trying to do. Everything minus the travel aspect, but I think they do that now. So, yeah, so that's kind of in a nutshell, like how that came to be and how my passion led me to Peloton. And it was kind of like, I just find that it's interesting, like looking back how it happened that way. So
Yeah, no, definitely. And so, a part of this show, I got my start truthfully because of the pandemic. And so I want to take you back to March of 2020 when we're all really introduced to COVID. And so thinking about
Right.
that time, not only as a globe, right, and as a country, but I think about some of the work you were doing. And so I would love for you to talk a little bit about one, how the pandemic affected you, and also how was it for you to transition to no in-person classes as an instructor where, you feed off of that energy of folks being in your
Right.
presence?
Yes. It's, so the question is, how did I transition and how did it affect me? You said?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the transition was, so I'm the kind of person who and this is why one of the reasons I can relate to the clients I serve. I've always been the person who I tell myself, like, I thrive in times of chaos or crisis. I feel like when people are freaking out, I kind of have a level head, almost like weirdly so, to the point where people think like he's too chill. Right. But then I've been told that before, like, you're like a little bit too laid back. But, so when that happened, I feel like in times of crisis, that's when I actually have the most clarity. I think it just awakens this, I've called it like this warrior spirit or warrior energy inside of me, where like I'm in a lot of ways, I feel like I'm just like built for battle. And it's the thing I admire and respect and can relate to in the clients that I serve, because often they're leaders, they're executives, and they're the ones who, in times of crisis, they're the ones who are the most focused when everybody needs them the most. And so I feel like in my perception, it didn't really take that much of a toll on me. There was in the back end down the road some issues because of unprocessed emotions and how much just everything was taking a toll on me. And I wasn't really supporting my best energy. So again, a way that I can relate to my clients, because often they're so focused on pouring to others, and there's so much in their own kind of like this loop of crisis and putting out fires that they forget to take care of their own needs. Right. And eventually I was pouring from an empty cup, but we're talking about the front end. So in March, it didn't really affect me too negatively. And I just remember like thinking, okay, there's going to be nobody in the class. So this is just like a testing period. It's like, you're back. It's no different than what I was doing before Peloton. Like before Peloton, I was, not regularly, but there was a point at which like I was like, when I told you before, I was like, I think this internet thing and like leveraging the internet towards, reaching more people and saving content, I think there'd be something behind this. And I bought camera equipment, and I was, for a period of time, I was practicing like what it would actually look like if I was, doing live streaming. And I remember doing it on Facebook, and like 3 people in the room, there was nobody there. But it wasn't for them. It was for me. I was like, let me see how I've seen people before working out while talking, but I've never done it. Let me see if I can actually do that. What does that feel like for me? Like, what are things that I'm not aware of that I need to watch out for? And so for me, it was just like that all over again. Not to mention my audition looked the same way. I was just looking at a camera, empty room. And so I was like, I've done this before. It's just me doing it again. Except now I have an even deeper connection to who was on the other side of the camera, because now I get DMs from people. I do Instagram lives, and I get to see who's taking my classes. I have the connection with people in the room, so I can use my imagination. I can pretend like there's people there. So that wasn't necessarily the hard part for me to perform in the moment, even though preferentially, yeah, sure, I would have preferred people to be in the classroom, but it wasn't a hindrance for me. If anything, it really gave me more freedom, I think, to just be like unapologetically like myself, and just, really choose the energy that I wanted to bring. Because one thing that people don't understand is that when you do have an audience of people that are there, yes, you can draw energy from them, but then also their energy is what it is. And it's already like, it can also, if you have a certain energy and there's a different energy there, then you kind of have to adjust. And so in my mind, there's really no one is better than the other. Obviously, I prefer having people there because I love connection. I crave connection. But if we're talking about strictly from the standpoint of like, did it affect my energy negatively? No, because it freed me up to like really paint this this canvas of this empty room with whatever energy that I wanted to bring that was just my own. And I think that I kind of, last thing I'll say is just like, I kind of look at it in the sense of like how I've heard it said before, and I kind of agree with it, is like, I'm like an actor, but for fitness. For fitness. Like a lot of people, they meet me, even on this podcast, I'm sure people, will listen to this and be like, wow, it sounds like Chase, but like his energy is different than what I hear on the tread. Yeah, because there's an energy that I have that I bring on that tread. Right. And I lean into that. I emphasize that. I put it on to the 10th power, because that's what's going to allow me and you to get the most out of this experience. And then when that's not needed, then I'm pretty much, I'm more reserved. I'm more more introverted. And I think a lot of people would probably be surprised by how more often than not, I'm pretty much just like chill, zen, unless we get talking about something I'm passionate about. Then that's the quickest way to rile me up, for sure.
Right. No, cool. So, thinking back now, so, you were with Peloton for 4 years, and I noticed you happened to resign in March of 22. So as the show notes, so why did you leave your job during the pandemic?
Yes. So I'm going to keep it in a nutshell. I actually made a longer post on my Instagram page about, I think the whole video kind of shortly after I left, about like the story of why, like how it started, the idea of like what I was going to do after Peloton, and then how, time passed and like just revealed it more and more. And I was working with that, but in a nutshell, I think I'll put it into like 3 parts. So part 1 is, even before Peloton, I knew that I wasn't going to be there forever. I knew that it was going to be a learning. I treated it like university. I knew that I was going to come there and I was going to learn something. I really actually treated it like a paid internship, or like a paid university, kind of like how students who graduate high school and go to college, or graduate university and go to like a master's program, they're paid to teach. If they're in that certain kind of program. So the way I looked at it is like I was literally getting paid as a job, but I was getting paid to teach, but I was learning at the same time. I was learning what it's like to work. This is my first ever job in corporate America. This is my first time having a massive stage and platform and achieving a level of notoriety that's bigger than just like small town, like Nashville, local boot camp instructor. There's a lot that I learned about myself. And it's why on the front end, I hired a life coach. I never hired a life coach before, but I hired one because I was like, I need someone else to know what my plan is and what I'm wanting to do. Because otherwise I know I can see on the front end, it can be really easy to get lost in this world. New York or a massive corporation or just whatever, it can be really easy to get caught up in it and get so wrapped up that I forget what the main mission is. And I wanted somebody to hold me accountable to that, who could just be there to hold me accountable. So that's step 1, is like going into it, I knew that I was going to eventually move on. I just didn't know when. Number 2, pandemic happened. And like I said, I kind of had a crisis mode moment for myself, a really low point where I wasn't serving my best energy. And I crashed, long story short, I had a fork in the road moment where I realized, okay, Chase, you can either, keep doing what you're doing and you're going to self-destruct, or you can get your shit together, right? And surrender, and everything works. Everybody wins. I was like, okay, I'll surrender. And so I kind of help, I have a strong foundation of faith based on, thanks to my mother and my parents. And so I like to say that I felt like God was pulling me to, step away from life for about 7 days, 7 nights. So I kept hearing 7 days, 7 nights, 7 days, 7 nights. And so eventually that space created itself in my schedule. And I took that time for this self-retreat, and I meditated, I prayed, I journaled. And it gave me clarity that I needed to know what all this pain, what all this stuff was trying to teach me. And then how I could harness it powerfully as a powerful launch pad into what the thing was for me next. And I realized at that time, Chase, these are your gifts and talents. This is what your next chapter is going to look like. And so and it wasn't 100% clear, but it gave me just enough to know that I needed to hire another coach who could help me get my plan together and make steady progress towards my exit, that I didn't know when exactly what would happen, but I just knew it was coming. And so that leads me to part 3, where February 22nd, 2022, literally 2/22/22. Just one of those kind of like synchronicity moments. But I woke up and I was just like, something's off. I'm not getting out of bed. I don't know what's up. I just feel like I can't, I'm energetically blocked from like getting, I was like, maybe I need to like sleep it off. Maybe I'm just like a little bit tired. And then I did hit snooze. I slept in a little bit more, still didn't work. And I realized, I paused and I was like, I think this is your last year working at Peloton. Or your last month or, day, whatever I was saying. I was like, I think it's time no, that's what I wrote. I wrote in my journal. I pulled it out, and after my bed, I remember typing, today's the day that you let Peloton know that you're leaving. And I just followed that. It was like very much like a spirit led moment. I was like, oh, okay. All right. And so I did. That led to a conversation that, I went on, and they let me know like, hey, let's have a call. Let's have a conversation, for your departure, to discuss this. And I was like, cool. And that was for the following week. So in between then and the next week, I had a time away already scheduled to go to Portugal for a spiritual retreat with a spiritual coach and mentor who I'd hired. And that was perfect timing, and it was very profound. And I get a lot of insight and wisdom that helped lay a foundation. So I had such clarity and such vision for what was to come that by the time I came back and had the conversation with Peloton, I was just like, everything felt right. It was just like ready. So.
No, that's great. And one, thank you. As you walk through that 3-step process, thank you for, kind of sharing some vulnerabilities there around, kind of what was going on with you at that time. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about what has happened since you left.
Yes, it's been a whirlwind since I left. And just to recap, so like anybody who's, for that last question you asked, to like, if I were to turn that into like a tactical playbook of like what to do when you're thinking about a pivot or, feel like there's a move you need to make. And I hear that's so funny because I hear that a lot of times people like, they're like, no, they need to make a move, but they don't do it. I have, and it's a strength of mine. I've learned, and I've also taken assessment tests that have shown me that like the activator gene or the activator trait, in the sense of like, when I know that there's action to take, like I take it immediately. That's very strong in me. And so how I would say that somebody else can make that similar move, then have that for themselves is use that 3-step formula. Step 1, identify in the macro view where you're at right now. What is it stepping you towards? Like, what is this? What are you supposed to get out of this? So that when you leave, that you've gotten out of this exactly what you're supposed to, right? And also, who can you potentially partner up with who can help you source out as much as possible from this opportunity before you move on. So that's step 1. Step 2, I would say, let yourself get away in stillness, silence, and solitude, away from the world, especially if it's a time like a divorce or like deeply painful situation. Pain is the greatest teacher. I'm so grateful for pain. I love pain. I've learned that I learn the most from the teacher of pain, not when I'm at my highest highs, but when I'm at my lowest lows, my most painful moments. And so, identify what's causing the most pain and what is it trying to teach you. Get away in stillness, silence, solitude, and like learn the lesson. And then number 3 is recruit onto your team the people who can help you make the move that you've now identified you need to make. So that's just like a 3-step little framework that I would say if anybody's curious. But to answer your question about what have I been doing since I left, I've been I've been building a business. I've been building a business, and my goal is to, I'll just say it. I'm going to be perfectly transparent and honest and candid. Just that I left a $1 billion unicorn, and I want to build a $1 billion unicorn, build a multi-billion dollar business. And when I say that, I'm not saying that this business necessarily has to be that business. What I'm saying is that within my lifetime, it's a non-negotiable that with every resource, breath in my lungs, blood, sweat, and tears, everything that I have in me, I've already made a contract with myself and God that I have to put everything I have towards creating something that will be maximally valuable and beneficial to as many people as possible. And it just so happens that the world doesn't have thousands or millions, but billions of people. And I want to impact 1 billion lives, minimum before I die. And so I don't know when I'm going to die, but I could live for 5 more years. But as long as I do everything in my power to achieve this and build $1 billion, build something that impacts a billion lives positively, then I've done what I came to do. So to answer your question, last year I was enveloped in coaches, a finance coach, a life coach, a spirituality coach, a performance coach. I even have like my Muay Thai instructor and coach. I was surrounded by coaches who I was in this pressure cooker of growth, people forcing me and just like having eyes on me. I'm feeling super exposed and feeling vulnerable and feeling like these people saw into my soul of what I was trying to do. They saw my weaknesses. They saw my flaws. They called out the things that I couldn't see. And I did that for a whole year, give or take, in 2022. So that now in 2023, I'm currently letting myself experience a season of being uncoached so that I can integrate a lot of the things that they taught me that I haven't yet integrated. But I was in that pressure cooker while building this business, and I learned a lot. I made a lot of mistakes. I gave myself permission to make a lot of mistakes. It was it's pushed me, it's stretched me, it's been painful. I thought that Peloton was like the thing where, like, don't get me wrong, Peloton's great, but every instructor, anybody who does what we do as instructors at Peloton, you don't do that without hitting a wall at some point that teaches you what you need to let go of in order to proceed further as your next level best self. Right. And so up until this business, that was the thing that had like, brought me to like my greatest growth. Right now, since I've left, it's been more than that. I've experienced more pain, more, blood, sweat, and tears poured in, more scary situations where like, I'm not sure, like, and it's really, honestly, it's just more things that have just forced me to lean on God more. That's really what it comes down to. And I think that, so I've just been building this business, leaning on God and really serving who he's called me to serve, serving and loving the people that he's called me to serve and love at the highest level possible. And I've not been perfect. I'm not a perfect human, but I'm doing the best that I can. And I like the trajectory that I'm going at.
That's great. Yeah, I've seen some of the work you've been doing with Elite Physique Mastery, and I think that's really awesome. And so when you kind of take a step back now, thinking about everything that you've kind of gone through over these past few years, what have you learned about yourself throughout this process?
Great question. What have I learned about myself the most? I would say I've learned discipline and self-control is 100% my best friend and my limiting factor in everything I will ever do in my life. And I will saying that, I will preface that with saying, I didn't have the best relationship with discipline growing up. My father tried to instill a style of discipline in me that I just didn't connect with. I was more of a mama's boy, and so I'm more of the emotional, more of the feminine energy that was like that came more naturally for me. I was very imaginative, very creative, so those are very feminine energy, like that's of like receiving ideas, and that's that came more naturally to me. That was always more natural to me. That's discipline and accountability and all those things. Those were never fun for me. And so I avoided them. Like pain avoidance was the first chapter of my life, not being grateful for pain, but resisting it and resenting it. Now I'm in the other chapter of my life where I actually seek it because I know that it's going to improve my discipline. And I'm learning, the more I learn about discipline, and there are some people who hear that word and I feel like there are certain words that you hear them and they create a very strong emotional response in individuals. I feel like discipline is one of them because I had, for people who are like me, who might be relate, I grew up with ADHD. I was a very highly sensitive individual. I was, discipline and focus didn't come naturally to me. And I felt somewhat ashamed and guilty and limited by that in certain ways. And so I, much like my clients who struggle with fitness, and so they avoid that their whole life until they're forced to, like in their midlife, because they wanted to play in the arenas where they felt strong and felt amazing, felt powerful, right? I did that as well. And I avoided discipline. I avoided doing what needed to be done versus what I felt like doing or was fun. But things like fitness and athletics, that was fun for me. What wasn't fun for me were things like math, things that forced me to sit down and focus for extended periods of time. Basically everything that this business is forcing me to do. So discipline. I think the limiting belief that held me back, that I was kind of living out before this business, was that discipline, you know what? It might be overrated. Maybe it's overrated. Maybe if I can just make things more fun, instead of just doing things regardless of how fun it is, maybe then that's the hack. But what I realized is that actually just that was my misinterpreting discipline as something that was only brute force, that felt like almost dumb. Like, oh, just do it anyway, regardless. Well, that's not very nuanced. There's nuance in situations, right? But I've learned now discipline, how I've learned it to be now, is discipline is actually a super high form of intelligence. Like for an individual who can articulate to themselves what's in their way, what the resistance is that's keeping them from doing something, and then to imaginate a way to alleviate that resistance or smooth it out or make it less friction so they can move forward. That's one of the highest forms of intelligence. Right. It's literally living out the, Darwin of, it's not the strongest that survives, but it's those who are most adaptable to change. Change is the only constant. And if I have strong discipline, I can always figure out a way to navigate in any moment. And so now I've learned that discipline is play. It's intelligence. Discipline is what allows me to play in the storm, play in chaos, play in crisis, because I'm being curious instead of being like, oh, what was me? I'm like, how could I do this? How can I make this not an issue for me? And I'm just like nimbly, just like walking through all this fire, just house burning around. And I'm just like, I'm just like moving around in a very curious, thoughtful, playful, intelligent way. And so now I look at discipline as something in the sense of, I grew up very much being like a mischievous kid. And so I like using mischief and using that energy, because it's very natural within me. So now I use it like discipline is actually like, how can I mischievously overcome or circumvent these obstacles that are trying to stop me? But I'm like, no, I won't let you. Like, I'm going to find a way around you, or underneath you, or through you. And discipline is just like, I've learned to make it fun. I've learned to make discipline in itself fun rather than trying to turn the situations and circumstances fun. I've learned to make the game of developing and building that muscle of discipline fun. And I'm not perfect at it. I fail and I struggle, but I've also learned how to no longer self-abandon myself and be like, hey, why do you suck? Like, what's wrong with you? Right? These are things that my clients tend to struggle with because they're self-critical and harsh with themselves. But I've learned that it's actually when I learn to be my best friend and not beat myself up, to be like, hey, you're learning. It's all right. Let's try it again. And treating myself as I would a friend, like being friends with myself. Because at the end of the day, this is where I'll just land the plane. It's like, where I'm going is it's going to be a very arduous journey. There's a very tough, very chaotic, it's not an easy path by any means. It's going to be hard. it's hard enough as it is. I don't need to make it harder by being my own enemy. I want to be my friend, and I want to treat my 5-year-old self, my 5-year-old inner child, with the utmost level of respect, kindness, love, and following through on the things that I said that I would do. So I allow him to experience beautiful stability and trust in me. And that's truly what confidence is. Confide, the root of that word, means confide, to trust. So long as I can trust myself, it doesn't matter what's happening around me, because I always trust myself to do what needs to be done.
No, I love that. I love that. And I have one last question for you that I've kind of added in now for season 3 is, what's one question you have for me that I could answer either about the show or the topic or anything like that?
I would just ask you, if there's anyone that you think I should know who could be valuable for helping me, impact a billion lives. And that's my purpose, I'm here to help as many people as possible. I'm here to serve as a positive, powerful, passionate catalyst for growth and transformation in as many lives as possible and as deeply as possible before I expire, by helping other people overcome obstacles physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, to their best selves, so they can live their most joy-filled, purposeful, and fulfilling lives. So if there's anybody that you know who I can connect with, who can help me do that at a higher level or even better, then I just ask that you don't hesitate to make that intro happen, or send them my way, or send me their way, or whoever might be.
No, absolutely. And that's something I'll need to give some thought to, because I do have some ideas, but would love to, I'll definitely take that offline and connect you all with that, because I think you have a beautiful platform that is for that. And so I appreciate, and I want to be really intentional about, connecting you with the right folks. So that's good to know. So this is my first one. So that's good. It's something I'll take away, and I'll share that with you.
Thank you.
Well, look, this was a pleasure. One, to get to meet you, to get to speak with you more deeply, other than just kind of seeing you on the screen and you kicking my ass a little bit. This is good to see you in a different format. But would love for you to share where our listeners can find you and support you.
Yeah. So I can be found on Instagram at Chase Tucker, and that's the only place you need to find me for now. But
okay,
that's it. Chase Tucker on Instagram.
Very good. Thank you very much. I'll make sure, I think we follow each other there. So I'll make sure I share that information in the show notes. And look, so that'll do it for today. Again, I want to thank my guest, Chase Tucker, for joining us. Like I said, I'll share his info in the show notes. Yeah, thank you. And I hope you all have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again for listening to Why I Left. Be sure to join us next time for more stories from the Great Resignation. Visit us at www.whyileft.co. That's whyileft.co. And subscribe to the show on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.